And basically, we have today 3 device platforms. We have the Android, we have the iOS, and we have Windows, which we have for our PCs, if you could say like that. Yeah?
Guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's if you're grouping Mac OS and iOS together, I guess.
Yes, exactly. So basically, because those platforms synchronize and work together. So the question is, where are we gonna? So which networks will these APIs work on? Second thing is, which kind of services can I do, which I can't do today with the APIs that already exist in the Google mobile services or in similar on the iPhone? And then what's the business model? Because these services, you get access to them for free as a developer in Google, because Google make the money on the App Store. So they say, oh, you develop a nice app, Scott. And you have access to location API and identical ID API, because we know the customer through the Apple apps, the Google App Store, the Apple App Store. So basically, it's difficult to see how the operator is going to get paid for something which Google and Apple already today is giving away for free.
Okay, so let me... Hello and welcome to this special, I've forgotten what my podcast's called, this special Telecoms.com podcast.
Good start.
This special just idiocy. We're shooting it live on the show floor at Digital Transformation World, DTW to its mates 24, which is here in Copenhagen in Denmark. And so, of course, we couldn't be in Copenhagen without getting our best Danish mate, possibly only Danish mate, analyst John Strand. It's for only your second appearance on the pod, I think it is.
It is, definitely.
And the first one in Denmark.
First one.
So it's great to have you here, John. We get to hear your views. And when you came to the one in London, you brought 2 massive carrier bags. You went to Waitrose and just said, give me all the beers. And you brought them, and it took us about a month or so to get through them. We might still have some. Like, we've still got your manky Carlsbergs. We won't touch them. And you've done it again.
Yeah.
You went off and you went and scored some beers just for this pod.
Yeah.
Although you've got it in a carrier bag with some ice, which is melting and leaving a puddle, which is making me a bit neurotic, but I'll get over it.
That's okay.
Why don't you tell us some of the stuff you got?
Yeah, we are in Copenhagen. We have the European Cup, the Carlsberg, and this is like with the Euro, for the,
Okay.
It's called for the team.
You can have that.
Nah, that's okay. Then I have this one. That's one of the ingredients when you
Hummus.
brew beers. Hummel. Sauce, that
yeah.
means humble. That's one of the ingredients when you brew beer. I don't know what you call it in English. And then it's called gravy.
Gravy.
But that's from a microbrewery at Bornholm, which is a small island very close
And
to
it's what's it
Russia.
called, a juicy IPA?
It's a juicy IPA. I know you love IPA, but this is by far my favorite IPA. It's called Yakima IPA. It's a Jacobson. It's Carlsberg, which have made Carlsberg have hops. It's hops gravy, and this one is really good. It's a Yakima IPA. Jacobson is like the high-end products which Carlsberg have, and I should think they should export them. But this
So this is a Carlsberg?
This is a Carlsberg.
But it's not
called
like
Jacobson.
It's not like that piss.
No. This is this is really good.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Listen, I open for you. Yeah.
All right, thanks, mate.
Yeah.
I pride myself on knowing how to open a beer, but thanks anyway.
That's okay. You want one too?
If you've got another one of those, I'll try one.
You'll have another,
Yeah. See it?
you'll have another
Thank you very
Carlsberg
much.
Deluxe.
Yeah.
You don't get yours
I don't
open.
get mine open.
You're not as important as I am.
I have one here too.
I'll go and shoot a video after this, so I can't have too many.
So I take a Carlsberg one here. It's called elephant beer.
Okay,
And
that sounds ominous.
yeah, when I was young, this is a strong beer. I think.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, you just a bit of ice fell off into his lap.
Oh my God.
Do you look like you wet yourself, Ian?
It's okay. This is 7.2%.
7.2%.
Yeah.
Oh, you want that?
It's called elephant beer. It's actually quite good.
Thank God
But
it's only an hour-long pod.
when I was a kid or young, we called it trunk water.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
So you used to get pissed on that when you were a kid?
Yeah, quite
You
much.
can't take many of them to finish you off.
That's the sort of thing
and-
that people drink on
And I remember when I was a Boy Scout, we went on a summer camp, and we went down to buy some beers. In this country, you start drinking quite early.
Yeah.
And we went down and said we want to have some elephant beers. in this part. There was a part of Denmark where they basically didn't sell these Carlsberg beers, so they had a local beer which is called Giraffe. And then we asked, is it just as strong as the elephant beer? And then the lady said on this very special dialect they have in this part of Denmark, I don't know, but I believe it's thicker. I never understand what it means that it was thicker.
Fair enough.
But it's actually a good beer.
All right, well, see you on the other side, mate.
It's good.
7.2.
7.2.
Daddy can of 7.2%.
You
You're going to know, but no, I'm all right.
Yeah, right.
All right, I'll give you a review.
Yeah.
That was very nice, by the way. It tastes like a proper hoppy, dry IPA.
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't taste like Carlsberg in other words.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like 7.2% at all.
No.
Oh my God, that's dangerous. That tastes like a normal beer, and it's 7.2%.
You want to try?
Okay.
Go on then, I'll have a little bit. Why not?
Yeah.
I think there's an ice cube in that top one. So
Okay. We put it there.
It's all right, you
It's
can,
just
you can
don't
put it with the rest of the puddle.
Okay.
The puddle's chasing me.
That's okay. It's
Right.
alive. Okay.
Okay, anyway, we better crack on because we only got an hour. So we're here on the first day of it. We're recording it because it's the only day producer Pierre's around because he's shooting off this evening. So this is on a Tuesday, so it's only a few days after we did our last pod. And I should say now, in case I forget, this will be the last one you get out of us for a while because I'm off, funnily enough, to France for 2 weeks from next week. So you won't see another one for about 3 weeks, sorry. So we better make this one count. So here at the show, we've all listened, like the main keynotes are normally on the first morning of a show, and we all listen to it. Last year I ruffled a few feathers by commenting that I thought the keynotes were a bit rubbish, and to qualify it, my reason was I just felt there weren't really any attempt at thought leadership. They were mainly just seemed to be commercial partners doing pitches, and I just thought it was a bit of a liberty to inflict that on. I think there's like 4,000 people turned up to this event, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, they weren't all in that auditorium, but there must have been, I don't know, 1,000 people in the auditorium.
They said it was 1,000.
Right. Okay.
Well, the auditorium's clearly too small for the event.
Yeah, I know, and we had to queue up, and then we weren't going to get in. So I said that last year, and that's fine. I stand by it. But this year, I think there's a distinct improvement. The main reason it was improvement, there was less of the sort of corporate, sort of trying to be Steve Jobs.
They obviously read your story, Scott.
I think so.
I took note.
I'm going to think that they hang on my every word. There was less of the sort of corporate platitudes, and there was also just better speakers. They were all, like top operators. So we had Mark Alera and is it Harmeet Mehta? Was that her name? So they're both senior within EE, and then we had Scott Petty. They had like a CTIO panel. We had Scott Petty, his equivalent at AT&T.
Jeremy Egg.
Kim from Telstra.
Kim, the Danish
Danish
geezer.
guy from
Anderson.
Telstra.
Yeah. And who was the fourth one?
Abdi Mudassir
From
Deutsche Telekom.
You're so good at the difficult names. And so I thought that was a really good lineup. So those are the positives. I say the negatives, they're not really anyone's fault. Certainly not TM Forum's fault. And I wouldn't say even the fault of the people doing the talking, and I'll obviously encourage you to in a sec to agree or disagree, was that there was just lots of quite vague, abstract, sort of conceptual stuff. You know, the general theme about this is digital transformation is about how operators sort of modernise and raise their game and reevaluate their business models so they can start making money again, because they're always moaning about how they don't make any money, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so there's lots of talk this year. There's lots of talk about public cloud. Obviously, this year there's lots of talk about AI. But it's all very conceptual and top line and vague. And I didn't come away with it feeling that they were any answers. What about you, Ian? What did you take from it?
I kind of agree with you on that. I think it's, on the positive side, I think the TM Forum showed that it's quite relevant in the industry now, and there were question marks about it a few years ago when it was still in Nice. You did hear people saying, you know, has the TMF lost relevance? You know, is some of the work that it does now done by other bodies, and
the change of venue is definitely good, not least because it's in lovely Copenhagen.
Yeah, I think attendance went down.
If you ever want a tour guide for Copenhagen, here's your man.
I think attendance went down to the sort of low 1,000s at one point.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow, so now it's up to 4 again.
It's up to 4,000. And you don't really hear people questioning the need for the TM Forum, what it does. And what it does, a lot of it is very nitty-gritty, kind of in the weeds.
Catalysts.
Things like ODA, which is really, really important, actually. But it's not going to change the fortunes of the industry, but it's needed for building these OSS.
What does ODA stand for?
It's open digital architecture.
Right.
And it's needed it's a standardization initiative, really, where you have like some common blueprints
Right.
for design.
And does that help with things like network exposure and that sort of thing?
No. So that's one area of confusion that the
Okay.
forum is doing the same thing as Camara, which is the GSM
Right.
initiative to expose bits of the 5G network to application developers.
Third parties.
They're kind of involved in that, but they're not involved on the
Okay.
on that part of it. They're doing the kind of deep in the systems in the OSS BSS side of things for that, which is really useful and important and helps to do things like reduce the costs of your IT systems. It's
Okay.
really needed. I'm much more sceptical about the Camara stuff. by
Fair
the
enough.
way, the
Okay.
APA. So-
And by the way, while we're being nice about TM Forum and the event, I'll say it one more time, and I've always said this about this event, certainly since it moved here. I think they show other events companies, which I won't explicitly name,
yeah.
how to do events. Like
Yeah.
things like, especially I don't think their media centre, which is behind us, they did knock that out of the park this
No,
year.
they didn't.
It's smaller and there wasn't any power. So there's a demerit. But in terms of things like the catering, just loads of free food and coffee and
They
pastries
do,
and shit
and
like
but the other thing I'd also say is like you mentioned all the people on the panel, what a great lineup on the panel. I mean, I think that in itself is evidence of the fact this event really
Speaks
matters
volumes,
to the CTOs and
All these
CIOs.
important people made the effort.
It's a really important organisation for them, and and so I think that's good. I totally go along with you though on the negatives, which is that when it comes to the topic of transformation and where the industry's going, and it's not in a very good state at the moment. Obviously, we've seen like really big sort of spending dips this year on equipment, and no one's really making any money. No one's growing revenues, and there doesn't seem to be an answer to it. It's like you say, it's very abstract. It's like we need to be a platform. We need to sort of
let's talk about platforms.
I find they don't really seem to be able to sort of just say what they mean when they're talking about connectivity in the future and how it sort of moves to be something different from what it is now. I'm very unclear on where they see the money coming.
And if they're struggling to articulate it to us, and I'll invite John to say whether or not he's got the memo in a sec, then you wonder who, if anyone, gets it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we know everything. John, so what do you reckon, John?
I honestly, I personally, yes, I'm very delighted. I think, of course, I'm Danish and I live in Copenhagen, but I must say I'm so happy to see how people really enjoy the place here. Town is cool.
It is. I love it. It's like a more chilled Amsterdam.
Yeah, and it's not smelling cannabis everywhere.
Yeah. And it's
so
full of English stag parties catching the place up.
But so no, I think it's really working well. The venue place is well known here, and it's a good place. Logistic is good to Copenhagen with a lot of cheap flights. We have affordable hotels too.
It's all good.
I think in that way it's quite good. But when I come here and talk to people, I went to the keynotes this morning, and they've been walking around talking to people, asking all the stupid questions and saying, sorry, maybe I'm a little bit stupid, but could you please help me? And
do they love it when you come in and ask questions?
Yeah, I probably reminds a little bit about my fellow citizen Hans Christian Andersen's, the little boys in the Emperor's clothes.
Oh, Emperor's New Clothes.
Yes, and basically asking all the nasty questions which nobody dares to hear.
Well, good for you. That's what we should be doing.
But I think it's very important. So basically, yes, we can say APIs can do a lot for creating innovative service in the future. Fine, we already know that. Let's look at the APIs. The first time we saw APIs in the mobile industry.
You're specifically now talking about the Camara type stuff, though, aren't you?
Camara type, but I want to bring it a step further. So the first time we saw APIs, that was Premium SMS. And Premium SMS was basically invented in England and Sweden, where you have different short codes, different price points, and then in Norway, Telenor said one short code across all operators, equal price points, 10p, 20p, 50p, £1, whatever. And then they have a revenue sharing business
which was
model.
Principally used for ringtones and porn.
Ringtones, logos, and there was regulation when it comes to porn, was self-regulation in England.
Okay.
I work with self-regulations all over the world. But Telenor basically made it one short code, same price points across all operators, and that makes things take off, TV voting and stuff like that. Even that the app stores came with the iPhone and Android in 2007 and 2008. I think in 2015 or 16, the value of premium SMS market worldwide was still bigger than the value of the app market worldwide.
Right.
So there's still a lot of cash flows, mainly on TV votings and stuff like that. So at that time, then GSMA said, oh, we need to expand the numbers of APIs. The billing API is just one of it. And then they made one API. I made a huge report on it. You go to our website, search on one API, you will just see tons of information about reports, and we did everything. And we said to GSMA and to the operators, you have two problems with the one API. First thing is I need to integrate to all 800 operators across the world to make it works. And second, there's no business model. What does it cost to use these APIs? At the same time, in Canada, GSMA and the operators in Canada made a gateway company where you basically connect to that gateway company and then you get access to all the APIs from all the operators in Canada. But this in the mobile space. But there was no business models. Again, how should we do these things? And we said, business model is an issue. With premium SMS and ringtones, I sell a ringtone for, let's say, €3, and the operator gets 30% of that amount. So they get €1 and I get €2. Have maybe €1 marketing cost and €1 in profit, if you could say it like that. So that was one API, and basically then they come with the Camara type, which is basically exactly the same. I was launched at Mobile World Congress last year, and I went to the people at GSMA, which of course new people, not the people who was involved in one API, and asked the same questions: what the business models, do I have to integrate to 800 operators across the world, and doing all those things. And those guys had no fucking clue on anything of these things. And then I come here and I feel the same again. Oh yes, because what's happened was the first generation of APIs, where the operators had a dream that they should sell the APIs, there came two operating systems, Android and iOS, and in them there was a lot of APIs. Google Mobile Services, a very nice platform where you have access to location, ID, up against the Google ID, you have similar on the Apple phone and all those things. So basically they took that market, and the operators basically made 30 to 40% of all the cash flow on premium SMS, and when it comes to the app market, they make zero, nothing.
Yeah.
They lost that. Here, my question is, and when GSMA launched Camara and all that, is fine. So these services, do they only work when I'm on my home network? What about roaming? What if my phone is on Wi-Fi? Okay, so do I have access to these things? And what if the Wi-Fi is in a hotel in Paris or in London or in Copenhagen and so on? And the reality is that we just don't use one network. We use mobile, we use aggregated Wi-Fi, we use our own private Wi-Fi, we use fiber, we use coax, we use different kind of networks technologies. And basically, we have today 3 device platforms. We have the Android, we have the iOS, and we have Windows, which we have for our PCs, if you could say like that. Yeah?
Guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's if you're grouping macOS and iOS together, I guess.
Yes, exactly. So basically, because those platforms synchronize and work together. So the question is, where are we gonna? So which networks will these APIs work on? Second thing is, which kind of services can I do, which I can't do today with the APIs that already exist in the Google mobile services or in similar on the iPhone? And then what's the business model? Because these services, you get access to them for free as a developer in Google, because Google make the money on the App Store. So they say, oh, you develop a nice app, Scott, and you have access to location API and identical ID API, because we know the customer through the Apple apps, the Google App Store, the Apple App Store. So basically, it's difficult to see how the operator is going to get paid for something which Google and Apple already today is giving away for free.
So let me just a couple of things on that, because the API side, while it's very relevant, and I understand the parallel you're making between GSMA initiatives and TM Forum initiatives.
Yeah.
But I think there's a point well made that what are the unique things that a network API gives you that a mobile OS API doesn't? And I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's a really good question to ask.
If you talk to people here, then if you go over the Google booth and talk to the Google people, then they say, oh, we have the Google Cloud, and actually we aggregate all these different Ericsson, the GSMA, we aggregate all those guys, and we get access to their APIs through our platform. So I have it a little bit like I believe that what will happen is that the hyperscalers, the Google, the AWS, the Microsoft, will basically say to the operators, to mobile operators, to other API providers, listen, just put your API in here, and then people can develop services using our cloud to store their data and have the application located there, and they get access to all these APIs through these guys.
Yeah.
And we maybe make a wholesale model with those guys, but they will probably pay peanuts. My problem is I generate all my revenue from these mobile operators, which basically are, according to what I heard this morning, in deep shit. Okay?
Yeah.
And
They're sort
basically,
of being a bit being more and more open about how difficult things are, aren't they?
listen. Let's be honest. You know, they sometimes they look like a cancer patient with a terminal.
But I agree with John on the like the Googles and the Microsofts and the AWS becoming the aggregators, if you like, of the of these APIs and being the kind of platforms between the telcos and the kind of application developer community. But I think that's a bit different from a lot of the stuff that the TM forum would be talking about. But I mean, my one of my issues with the Kamara type stuff and this idea of network exposure and getting application developers to write more sophisticated software that taps into 5G features is I just don't see, even if you address all of the points that John's made about the difficulty of just making it work across different networks and the difficulty of accommodating Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff, even if you deal with all of that crap, I'd still not see this as a big revenue generator for the industry. I just don't think. I mean, we've made jokes about this. I think Dean Bubley's picked up on this idea of having a quality of service feature
which we characterised as
a less shit button.
A less shit.
Where it immediately, to me, begs the question: if you're a consumer, it's like, why do I need a quality of service API? Why is my
and I'll tell you another thing. I think again, bringing it a little bit further back to. John's got beer plans.
John's moving.
He's moving shit around.
Yeah.
He wants to share this. He wants to share this rainbow beer a bit.
It's like guess which beer the thing's under.
There's no rainbow signaling in this one. Trust me.
No, it's fine.
No?
I don't mind. I've got no problem with it.
No,
Anyway,
there's no problem with that. But it's
So yeah, bring it even, like again back to this event and the topics discussed here. What you get is. So like a lot of the messaging around when Ericsson bought Vonage, it was like sort of future-proofing. It was like they were struggling to articulate what the business case was for it now. They're just saying we're skating to where the puck's going to be. This is inevitable. We're just getting into it early, and I think we get a lot of that at this event where they're going, look, you've got to cloudify, you've got to have AI in every fucking thing that you do.
Well, I think the problem with the Ericsson deal, the Vonage deal, is that when Ericsson started talking about that Vonage acquisition, which they spent quite a lot of money on, I think it's like the biggest acquisition in their history.
And then they've written off.
And then they wrote off a lot of costs. But they were talking about it as though it was only they thought of this, and they were the guys who were going to drive this kind of API mission. Then it quickly became apparent that everybody's all over it. So then you've immediately got this other situation where it's all going to end up quite fragmented, and I totally agree with John. I think the winners from all this are probably going to end up being like AWS.
So just to finish my sort of train of thought, because I only brought up do you want us to taste this?
This is really
You're
good.
desperate for a review.
Listen, tell you.
Is this wine strength beer?
No, that's what John's drinking. What's the strength of this one?
Oh, that's quite nice.
This one doesn't taste very strong.
That.
Yeah, so it's still 6%. God, they know how to do a weighty beer that doesn't taste like it. That's very nice. I approve.
Yeah.
Cool. So just to finish with the reason I only brought up Ericsson and Vonage and APIs as an exemplar. There's just a lot of this. Yes, we know we've got no new business ideas right now. We've got no new revenue streams. Our only bright idea is to try and salami slice OPEX a little bit. But we're skating to where the puck's going to be, to use the Wayne Gretzky term. This is inevitable in however many years, and it's always going to be next year, isn't it? But let's say in 5 years, everyone's going to be doing all this shit. And the biggest thing they're asking for is a leap of faith. They're saying, look, I know there's no big revenue opportunities coming from it now, but they will come, I promise you. But then they say that every year.
I don't think even the most outlandish projections of what they will make from these API
that's significant.
aren't that significant. I think there was one that came out from McKinsey at Mobile World Congress that it's between now and 2030 it's a $300 billion opportunity, which
The
sounds
whole
like
TAM.
which sounds like a lot of money,
But not for an entire market.
this is the industry, according to Omdia's figures, the whole of the fixed and mobile industry worldwide, including China and everywhere, makes about $1 trillion a year.
Right.
And then you're talking about this over a kind of 7-year period. You look at that
Yeah,
300
so
billion.
it's like
It's actually quite a
0.01% of it or something.
and then you've got other forecasts talking about 20 billion or 30 billion, which is totally insignificant. 20 billion or 30 billion for an Ericsson's great, but it's not great if you share that across the whole industry.
Right.
It's
So
nothing.
The problem is, it's very simple. I go down and buy some beers, okay? I go into a store,
You're very good at that.
buy the beers, I buy a plastic bag,
Arguably even
and I
better
buy
than
some ice cubes, which is soon all over here.
this lake that we've got here.
This is business transformation.
You're transforming it from a
Going from
a nice
being cold,
environment to a
cold
puddly
being,
environment.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, what I think is important to say here, what is the price? What does it cost? Where can I buy it? How can I use it? And honestly, these guys, and what does it mean for the consumer? Okay. So when my son downloads an app on the App Store, and let's say it's a premium app, we know what it costs. When he
So you get that little surprise message going, "Thank you for your purchase." And you're
Yes.
like, what the fuck? Yeah.
So basically, I think it's very important to say that a lot of these people, deep respect for them, love technology, okay? And they're probably happy with their salaries, but they don't realize that the money they get every month is actually accumulated through customers, which in average in Europe's paying like 12 or 13 euros a month. Okay? So you have all these, let's say a lot of these people are European, the people come from all the world. I think it's amazing to see. But you have all these people, which basically some of them made big figures in salary. And their salary is basically paid through accumulation of the revenue. Thousands of customers are generating every month. Okay?
Yeah.
And I want to see the face on the people who basically says, this month I pay 13 euros, okay? And look at very simple. So ARPU when the 3G auction was made in Europe, the predictions was that ARPU would go from 36 euros to 74 euros, double because of all the 3G service. And then the reality is that instead of doubling, it went down to less than a half or close to a third. So the revenue which should come didn't come, it actually declined. It had been erased to the bottom. And basically, for me, it's a little bit absurd if I look at the mobile operator's share of your wallet. So people go out, basically they pay, let's say, 10 euros or 15 euros a month for their mobile subscription, and then they buy an iPhone, which every time there's released a new iPhone is increasing the price with about 8 or 9%, which is like 4 to 5% more than inflation. Yeah. So basically, operators' share of wallet have gone from close to 100% to 10, 15%. If we include all the services we consume on the phone, the Spotify, the Netflix, all the different apps, and we include all the revenues generating on advertising and all those things, basically the operators used to run beautiful hotels with fantastic restaurants, and right now they look a little bit like the dishwasher.
I don't think they ever ran beautiful hotels with fantastic dishwashers.
Restaurants.
Fantastic restaurants, rather. I don't think I don't view operators in that. They were golden companies.
I think I'll meet in the middle where I think their brands were more sexy, like back in when mobile phones were newer.
They were briefly sexy when mobile phones were taking off. If you
Yeah.
go back before that to the era of before liberalisation, they were utilities. You remember the days Bob Hoskins, It's Good to Talk? And they were shit, actually. BT's service in the UK was what you'd expect a utility company service to, a bad utility
and a former
company
state
service.
monopoly.
You paid a fortune on long distance charges. I remember my sister getting into trouble with my dad all the time because she phoned up her boyfriend in Leeds, and she was on the call for an hour, and he'd be hit with some monstrous bill.
Right.
You know, and then they liberalised the market, and they got competition in with the mobile phone era, and they were briefly sexy while everybody was buying phones, and it was a growth market. And then once it's and by the way, people still, William Webb makes this point that people still spend huge amounts of money on their mobile every month to the telcos, and that's always going to be there. It's like your water. Bill. You're never going to stop doing it. It's just they can't go any further once they've got everybody signed up. They still make a huge amount of money.
And in markets that are saturated.
Down,
Look at the history book in England. I remember I was a judge in a British Mobile Award. The magazine don't exist anymore. I think it was called Mobile UK or something like that. Even there's a trade organization called that now. But anyhow, all the judges was there for several days, finding the winners, checked in a nice hotel in London, had a lot of fun.
We don't do that for our judges.
And basically it was in the good olden days.
Yeah.
And I remember that the mobile operator of the year was Virgin Mobile, and Richard Branson came to the event for the gala dinner in the evening.
Becoming a balloon.
And people were screaming, and he was a rock star. And actually, listen, Virgin Mobile was an MVNO on T-Mobile's network.
Yeah.
But in all the when people was asking people who had the best network, Virgin Mobile's networks was significant better than T-Mobile's.
Because of brand.
Just because of the brand.
Yeah.
And you had at that time, you had basically the market was.
But I bet they still thought both were shit.
Yeah.
I bet most people these days have a better perception of the mobile experience because of all of these other services you can use on it. You look how addicted people are to their phones, walking down the street on them.
I agree.
They're on them all the time. Whereas if you go back to, I think, 2003, 2004, 2005, when it was walled gardens and not very good handsets and not a great mobile technology.
Vodafone 360 or whatever.
And so unfortunately, the companies that have made the mobile phone experience really exciting are not the telcos.
Well, John's in danger of getting a tan here. What's coming through? John, I'm going to butt in just because in the interest of time, there's a bunch of things I want to move on to. Just to finish off on the morning keynotes, there's a couple of issues I want to talk about. First is the people who came up first, which was Mark and Harmeet from BT/EE. And they were talking up this transformation they're attempting.
Yeah, you loved that.
Yeah. Well, so let me. I know you two both got plenty of opinions on it. So let me just frame it first. And so about 9 months ago, we went to Ali Pali and got pissed on, and saw Fatboy Slim, and it was all about them pivoting into this being this sort of broad brush, digital sort of consumer-facing brand. And it was a bit of a head scratcher. We did plenty of pods about it at the time. We weren't sure what was going on. And then what we got today was like a 9 months later update, and apparently they got 10 million mobile subscribers signed up to BT to EEID. But I mean, I'm one of them. But I only use it to gift data to my family. I don't use it to buy fridges, as they were famously, perhaps slightly misrepresented by the FT and other papers.
No, I don't think they were misrepresented.
Well, no, but I mean, that's just obviously one part of what they're doing. Anyway, just to finish, I mean, I'm trying to steelman their position. Steelman means view it in the most sort of sympathetic possible light. There was lots of talk about platforms. There was lots of talk about how through this process they're doing, it's not just about selling fridges, they're also getting rid of 90% of all their legacy IT and all that sort of thing. And all
Fair enough.
But I got to admit, and then I chatted to, and then I'll quickly finish before I hand it over. And then I chatted to another analyst friend of ours, Paolo Pescatore, before this, and he, Paolo tends to be quite a sort of upbeat, want to see everything in the best possible light. And he was going, it's difficult what they're doing, and it's a big move, and I applaud them for trying it, and all that sort of thing. And I took all that on board, but I'm still thinking, what's the fucking point of it, if I'm honest? Which of you wants to run with that?
Well, I 10 million new subscribers. I mean, here's the thing.
Well, they're not new subscribers, they're just people ported over to them.
All right, so there's one of the headline figures that they wanted to throw out there, and you'd think as an investor, if you come along and someone gets up on stage who's one of the top people in the company and goes, there's 10 million new registrations for this thing we've had since we did this thing 9 months ago, that Jesus Christ, this is a company I should definitely be investing in. What was BT's revenue growth at the last check? I think in end of, year to end of March, 1%.
Right.
So the 10 million registrations they got for new EE have done absolutely zero for sales growth. That would be my main point.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what's the point of it then? Because that's what you're trying to do with something like that, isn't it? Drive sales growth.
What do you think, John, when they were talking about this?
And the first thing
Right
they
idea.
talked about, we sell all these things. You don't have to be, but they came with this sentence, you don't have to be a BT customer to buy electronics, whatever it is, your gadgets, whatever it is, from us. And I just said, so these guys basically want to compete with Dixon and Amazon, okay? And how big is your volume when you're buying it, okay? And
Sorry, I'm just wincing it. I was going to interrupt. I'm looking at some of the other beers John's brought, yeah?
yeah,
He's brought Carlsberg Master Brew, and I'm thinking that sounds ominous.
Yeah.
10.5%.
Oh
Fuck
my
is-
God.
What's wrong with you?
That's wine,
and then,
John.
And then we've got. No wonder you're keen on going for the one that's
Yeah.
only 7.2%. And then we got something that I can't even pronounce that for
yeah,
me.
that's called Årgangsøl. That means the year,
a
like
crazy
a
language.
vintage. It's a vintage beer, and this is the year of 2024.
Can you say that word
Say
again?
that word again.
Årgangsøl.
Cool. And
Oh,
what,
no,
about that
that's
word?
like-
What does that word say?
Vibro.
Okay. And then tell us what percent volume alcohol this one is.
Oh, 10.6.
10.6. What's
Yeah.
wrong with you?
Listen,
I've
I've
got bills to pay, mate. I can't be getting off my tits at
Listen,
4 o'clock.
Danes are some of those drink most in Europe.
Yeah.
Make me drink
We
this
know that.
But
Kronenberg.
we have the same in Denmark.
Uh-huh.
You know, we have some comedians.
Is that a normal one?
We have some.
Yeah, it's a Blanc.
Before stand-up comedians was invented, we had some comedians who did a record at the time we was in Vinyl, only about beer, and basically they made a song that they made a lot of jokes about beers, but they basically said beer was invented by a mistake. The mistake was not invented earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as it was invented before I was about 15, then I'm happy. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No.
You were talking about the
We don't
EE
baptize kids in beer.
Dixon's-
The EE Bright
Dixon's
idea.
and Amazon.
Yeah.
E. Dixon's.
No, but I have a little bit like get a BT ID. Okay, we have seen in a number of countries where the operators try to get the market position of creating the digital signature. Okay.
Yeah.
And the alternative is that the government created digital signature. Now we are in Denmark, which is the most digital society in the world. Number one.
Is that,
Everyone in Denmark.
Number one at most things.
Yeah, no, but
It
listen,
is.
no, it isn't that. So
We
just-
learn that every
just
time we
to say
come
one.
here.
So just to say this much, we don't receive any letters at home anymore. The government have stopped subsidizing the mail company in Denmark. Okay, no subsidize. The mail company is living its own
What if
life.
you want to send some chocolates to your loved one?
You can do that, and you can still exist, but
just
you.
pay normal rate through
Yeah.
FedEx or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah, whatever. But it still exists, but they have increased the price dramatically. But so that's everything is digital. So all Danes have a digital signature on their mobile phone, which is issued
Well,
by
that
the
sounds
government.
ominous.
It does a bit.
By
Sounds a bit big.
That sounds a bit
sounds
China,
trackable.
John.
Yes.
Sounds a bit social
done.
credit.
But listen, but the interesting thing is we use to sign on our banks, on everything. We sign documents. So if you want to lend some money, you don't have to go and sign a document. You do it like that. Even if you want to get divorced, what's happening is you go to the forward.dk, citizen.dk, and you basically said, I want to get divorced from my wife, blah, 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 blah.
There's an app-
And
there's
you
an app for
sign, yes, and
The
you
scan
sign
your
it with your,
eyeball and goes,
you
"You're not allowed."
sign it with your digital signature. Your spouse or your ex-spouse get an email that basically your husband have filed for divorce,
Right.
and this is a simple divorce, so
Right.
you have handled the financial things. So please log in with your digital signature and sign that you approved it,
Right.
and it can be done. So one of my
Sounds a
friends.
bit Xi Jinping to me.
No, we trust government, and
Is it you saying? Sorry to
Everything-
interrupt, but that thing about trusting government's critical. And I actually think when I come to places like this and I realise how differently it can be done in places like Denmark compared to the UK or the US, which is probably the other country I'm most familiar with. Some of it is cultural. There's something about you Danes where you're more collaborative and you trust your government more, and probably your government is more trustworthy. If the UK government had some kind of digital ID and they knew what I was doing all the time, I know they would abuse it. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. But maybe the Danes just elect a different kind of leader.
no, but we have one advantage. We're only 5.7 million people. We are basically very homogeneous society. Okay, just to take an example, it says in our constitution we are a Christian country built on Christian values, and the church, like yours, Church of England, we have the Danish full church, where 78% of the Danes are members. They don't show up in church. They are CEO Christians, Christmas, Easter occasion.
Okay.
But basically, we pay church tax. The government collect the money.
Do you do Easter eggs?
We do Easter eggs,
Okay.
and we have bunnies at home.
Cool.
And
Sorry, I
so,
interrupted.
yeah.
But I had to know.
No, it's true. But so it is different. But I think it's important to understand which role are the operators playing in the digital society.
Yeah.
And I think they play a very important role because they're basically building the fundament of the digital society. They enable things to make it possible to happen.
But on your just going back to your Dixon 8 Amazon.
Yeah, but it's just like, just a little bit like, listen, it's like.
I agree with you on that.
Listen, if you go back in the history in England, each operator have basically a quarter of the market. If you go back in the past, and Carphone Warehouse was selling 30% of all contracts in the UK. Okay, I always joked at that time, Charles Johnson quite well. I always said to him, "You're the biggest operator in the UK, because you're basically selling three out of 9 contracts in the UK." Yeah. So no, I think it's important to say that it's fine that operators tried to make a digital ID. Telenor and Norway did the same, but then the government came with their idea, and then it was just replaced like that.
If I'm going to be kind to the stuff that Mark and Armin were talking about on stage, I think it's they've tried to do something different.
Yeah.
In terms of revenue growth, and it's
If
very.
Paolo was here, you go. At least they're fucking trying something.
The other thing is, it's not talking about it in an abstract way, which I find a lot of this API stuff we were talking about earlier is very abstract. It's very hard to get your head around actually, and sort of figure out the revenue flow from that and why it would benefit the industry. Whereas this is very clear. You could talk to your dad or your mum about this and say, look, what they're trying to do is have a store where you can go and buy other products, and you can. But I totally agree with John. I think the trouble is that game, they lost that game to big tech.
They don't have the scale.
They don't have the scale to do it, and that's the issue for the industry.
I'm still trying to work out what their different take on it is.
I don't see that they have. This is the problem: is that there's all these really smart people here, they're super bright people, much cleverer than I am. And yet they can't figure out. They can't figure out a new business model, a new opportunity for telecoms. No. So they have to talk about it in this kind of slightly roundabout, abstract
because
way.
it's really tough, and this is where again I'll be sympathetic. And then I'm going to, if it's all right with you, I'm going to move it on. So we haven't got much longer there. I don't think we're going to have time to talk about you're not going to have some of that 10%. I'm not going to go. I'm going to avoid you if you have that.
I just think.
But it's fine. No, you go for it, man. I'm not going to check. You're a big boy. Make your own decisions. As you say, there's lots of smart people spending a lot of time and resources trying to get their head around this problem. But, it almost goes all the way back to what John was alluding to when they were talking about one API back in the day. As soon as we had that critical inflection point of 2008, where the modern day smartphone existed, and suddenly all the value was owned by the owners of those smartphone platforms rather than the people who ran the network, or indeed the people who do the devices. I mean, Samsung makes fuck all money as well. The only device company that makes money is Apple, because they charge a much bigger margin, partly because of their unique product, partly because of their brand, and partly because they've got so much control over the supply chain and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to lead up to in conclusion, before I move it on, unless you two have got anything last words to say, is...
Are we signing off soon?
No, we're moving on to another subject. Oh. We've got about another 25 minutes or so left. I'm the one who has to keep an eye on the time.
I know, I'm intrigued what the other subject is.
I'm going to ask John what he's been banging on about in his day job. Anyway, it's difficult. And I guess that's the other reason I'm not going to be too hard on them for trying things that we're all struggling to understand the point of, like the EE idea, is it's hard to know what the answer to it is. All the value is owned by hyperscalers. A lot of this show is talking about how we've got to get in bed with AWS and Google Cloud and all that sort of thing. But, as I think John might have been alluding to earlier, that just means that they're going to be taking the value of the next wave as well.
And you know what the key problem with the hyperscalers, because they have a fantastic business model. Their business model is pay as you grow. As more traffic you drive through their platform, as more data you put on the platform, as more you're going to pay. And the operators are selling their services flat rate. Okay.
Yeah.
So if your OPEX is based on a pay as you grow model, and at the same time your revenue stream is a flat model, fixed fee, then basically it's just a matter of time before you're really fucked.
Well, on that point, I thought it was
thoughts.
quite interesting that I think it was Jeremy Legg at AT&T who said it's an end of the. He was suggesting they're going to move away from this unlimited data tariffs.
Right. Well, good luck with that.
Well, I don't think good luck with that. I actually think that's what they should do. I don't think you.
No,
can't,
I'm
you
saying they
can't-
should do it, but good luck getting the consumer to go
well,
for it.
Why not? I mean,
It's totally fair.
You can't meter it.
No,
for sure. You can't do it like every megabyte you're using, you pay this, like on an electricity meter. But you
Okay.
can certainly do pricing, and I think that's. I don't think he was suggesting we're going
Okay,
to do
just
that.
a sort of tiered
But
service.
this idea that
sort
you
of
just use whatever you want and here's what you pay for it, I think was a stupid avenue to go down. And
Okay.
and to talk of them doing
enough.
something different,
And we-
I think it's really smart.
And we
actually.
would have spoken about a story you wrote, getting a take from some stuff that AT&T said, but I don't think.
Yeah,
we've
which
got-
was less negative, which
Yeah.
was less positive. Sorry.
but I don't think we've got time to do that justice. So I'm gonna move on from it. I'm afraid I'm gonna pivot. Say, John, I mean, you can talk about anything, any research you've done recently, but I think this week, or was it last week, you sent out a research note about, we've just had European Parliament elections in the EU.
You didn't participate. This
No,
year.
no. Thankfully, mainly.
But you have another election.
Mainly because of me, because I voted for Brexit. Yeah, we get to choose between two pointless idiots in England. Yay for Brexit. We're really striking out on our own now.
You can choose between the pigs and the wild pork.
Something like that, yeah. And anyway, and they had all these elections, and the top line. I mean, this is very much not telecoms, but believe me, listener, we are going to pivot it back. I know it's really, you're getting a tan there, aren't you? They've basically got a glass roof. We're indoors, but they got a glass roof, and it's quite sunny. And
Sunglasses.
And if there was a swing in terms of popular sentiment, it was to the right. And you know
No
how,
impact.
and you know how, yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a second. And you know how a lot of the media sort of freak out whenever someone who's a little bit nationalist, a little bit sort of my country first, that they start making all sorts of very hysterical comparisons with certain ominous figures of the mid 20th century. But I don't think, and there might have been one or two places where some parties that are considered legitimately far right, like maybe AfD in Germany is one. But what it really was just a swing among sentiment toward the right, towards a more sort of, and which must be especially worrying for the EU, a sort of pro-nation sort of sentiment, and another right-wing, it's so hard to define what right-wing means these days.
I'm not even sure some of it was pro-nation. I just think anybody who raises a question about immigration limits these
So
days,
yeah, that's a big part
gets
of it.
tarred with this
Orders.
hard right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
But I think it's very. If you look at the election, I think.
Yeah, so you wrote, just let me quickly finish framing it and then
Yeah.
you carry on. So then you wrote a research note, obviously summarising that, but also giving the telecoms perspective on it, especially a real strength of Strand Consult. I think we've got to give credit to Rosalind Layton on that one, is regulation and that sort of thing. So yeah, over to you, John. You gave us some perspective
No,
on
but
that.
listen, I think it's very important to say, the media have been going crazy saying, right-wing parties have success. The reality is, people very often don't understand how EUs work. Okay, so the parliament, with deep respect for it, is a kind of Mickey Mouse parliament.
Yeah,
So
do you agree that it's a sort of rubber stamping thing?
But the parliament cannot raise suggestions of laws and stuff like that. They have to approve it, but they can have their finger stamps on it. So when the commission come with suggestions of what to do, they can come with
The real executive power is the commission, isn't it?
exactly. And it also because they have to be approved by all 27 countries. So, but I think it's also important to say that yes, the Green lost and the right wing won. But what's interesting is that the center parties, the socialists, the liberals, and the conservatives, some of the conservatives combined, still have the power in the parliament.
Yeah,
still
as
have the
opposed to the
majority.
fringes.
Yes. So, said it very simple. If you look at the parliament, you say yes, people move from being green to being right wing, if you could say it like that. Of course, it's a slide.
That's the rough direction of travel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, but the middle is basically the same. The middle base is more or less the same. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I think it's important. Why are people voting like that? And people is always talking about America is so split, and you have Republicans, Democrats, and so on. Europe is more split than America, but we accept it because it's nations. Okay.
Yeah.
So when Britain decided to do Brexit, it was a little bit like if Texas or California in the United States says, now we want to be an independent country, okay?
Except in your own report, you made a point of stressing that we're not the United States of Europe.
Not at all. Not even close. Because, and even in America,
I'm impressed that I read something.
people in Europe don't understand the difference between federal and state in the US.
Yeah.
So the problem is, the Americans don't understand what's going on here. They still believe that IKEA is the capital of Stockholm. And the Europeans,
Lego is the capital of Denmark.
and basically the Europeans still believe that if you vote the president who get the power in the US, he decide everything. Okay. And that's not the reality. So that's one thing. The important thing, if you look at from the telecom industry, is which commissioners will there be there.
Yeah.
And basically, Margrethe Vestager, she's history. She's gone.
Oh, that's so cool the way he just says it like that.
Yeah, but that's...
Well, he's Danish.
She's
I know.
a Vestager. for me.
Vestager, yes.
Margaret Vestager.
Listen, you
Say
always...
it again properly.
Vestager.
Say it
Margrethe
wholly.
Vestager.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
No, honestly, we're not taking
Yeah,
a piss.
but, that's
It's just cool hearing you.
She's a nice lady in many ways, and she's done a lot of great things, and she's been considered as like the woman with the
She's a
big
real
baseball
figurehead.
bat.
She's a real figurehead.
No doubt about that. But when it comes to telecom, she's done a shitty job. Okay? She don't understand why we need consolidation. We can see that the telecom industry in Latin America being consolidated, in the United States have consolidated, in Africa being consolidated, in
Are you
India
talking
because of-
especially like mobile operators? Like, are we allowed to have less than 4 in a country?
Exactly.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
You have 3 in India, you have 3 in the main part. You have countries in Africa with 6 and 7 mobile operators, which consolidate into 3 operators. So, what I think is very important to say is, she didn't understand that. She'd been there 2 terms. That's like, almost. So basically, when you look at that, she didn't understand. She will be replaced. And my personal opinion is that any...
Do we have any idea who it might be? Is there like
We have no ideas right now. But basically, the important thing here is anyone who replaces her will probably be better for the telecom industry. And her key problem, I also did actually in my EU research notes I sent out, I put a link to a research notes why she wouldn't change her views before she left office, because she had to think about her legacy and so on. Made a quite cool note about that. Fine. So she's gone. She will be replaced by better. The important thing is today we have Breton, which is actually commissioner responsible for the internal market, which is probably one of the most powerful positions you can have in the EU Commission, because the EU is about trade. And basically whatever you do in the EU is always involved trade. It will always involve him. He's appointed in France. In France, he's appointed by the president. So this interesting thing is that the prime minister in France do the national policy, and the president do the international policy and the EU policy to a certain extent.
Right.
So the interesting thing is, will he be reappointed in that position, or will he go to another part?
So he can hang around.
Whatever commissioner France gets, because they will get one, it's difficult to get something which is more powerful than the job he had today.
Yeah.
So then now, during the election we just had, Macron decided to poll for an election in France. And a lot of people say that's suicide. They look at it a little bit like Sunak's, what he did in England. But the reality is that
He'll still be president.
he will still be president until April 2027.
Yeah.
And the reality is that he can see right now that Le Pen's party is extremely popular in France, and they're standing outside the door screaming, you are amateurs, you do a bad job and all that.
He's like, try being in power.
And he cannot run he ran for 2 terms, he cannot run again, so he had to leave the office. And he knows, listen, I will give up the power, we will give up the prime minister, we give the keys to the national policy, to Le Pen, and then she's gonna deliver.
See what you do with it.
And she basically, I think he's thinking, she had now 2.5 years to fuck off and prove that she can't deliver what she.
Well, and also we're going for a bit of a tangent. It's quite interesting because I'm going to be driving around my holidays. I'm going to be driving around France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to be getting pelted with rotten fruit.
All these elections.
Over there?
All these elections. No, actually, I think Brits are the least of their worries at the moment. But all these elections are going to be happening while I'm going around France. But the interesting thing is, if Le Pen's party, who they used to be called Front National, now they're called, what are they called? What's Le Pen's
Something
party called now,
friendly,
Pierre? RN. What's the R stand for? Something like
National.
gathering,
Yeah.
national gathering. So it's a sort of toning.
He
It's a
kicked-
toning down of
she
the NF
kicked her
thing.
father out
Yeah,
of the
Jean-Marie,
party.
who was a proper racist. Anyway,
Yeah, and he basically owned the brand, so she
And
had
so-
to rebrand it.
and so if RN wins, the Prime Minister won't be her because she wants
Did
to be
she,
president.
No.
It'll be this
She kicked
geezer
him out
who's like
after.
28 years old,
Yes,
isn't it?
and which is really popular in France because on the paper he grew up in what can we say, in the suburbs among poor people and stuff like that. He had a rich father, but he's only 28 years
Yeah.
old. But he speaks a beautiful French. He speaks like he's 40 or 50 or 50, whatever.
Just
Uh,
do
so
you speak
it-
better as you get older?
No, but you must listen. You're British, and you have a society which is class divided and snobby. France is even worse than that.
Yeah.
Okay, when you're on a libertarian level, trust me, it's true, and yeah, it's true. It's a very
Well, so
libertarian
it's-
society when you're on that level. Okay,
Is Pierre
You have
shaking
to-
his head?
you have to be going on the right school. No, honestly, my brother lives in Paris. He said if his kids don't speak proper French, they
Yeah,
don't
so
have a
posh,
chance.
he doesn't know what you're talking about.
No, exactly. But his English is quite good.
Yeah, it's very good.
He don't even have the strong French accent. But no, but I think it's basically I think it's very important to say that that election could have an impact on who it will be and what will happen. But
Right.
the reality is, the EU Parliament's main focus will be AI, big tech, protecting consumers. That's where they make the noise. That's where they can show their votes. They do something, and basically they don't care for telecom policy. Okay.
So do you think you gave you were sort of nice about I will obviously pronounce it wrong, Margarita Vestager.
Yeah, she's
but you
different.
said that she hasn't done a great job for telecoms. What do you think about? What's your verdict on Breton for telecoms?
He said all the right things, but in certain ways he haven't delivered always. Okay, then you always can discuss what is his responsibility and what is Vestager's responsibility, and you can say it in different ways. I actually had the chairman of a quite large operator who reached out to me yesterday saying, what do you think it will be? Will Breton be re-announced or whatever? And will it be good? And so on. I said, listen, I think we know what we get if we get him.
Big haircut.
Exactly. But I think actually, but listen, he understands what this is about. He's also the former CEO of Orange, and then people can complain about that. But listen, he understands what this is about. The reality is, in the period where Vestager, as you say, Vestager, been the competition commissioner,
Don't lower yourself to my level.
according to EU's own reports, the investment gap in Europe have grown from 100 billion euros to 200 billion euros.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a region where there's a huge investment gap, where we need solid, basic digital infrastructure. Okay, and basically, what's interesting here is we need to find a way to facilitate these things to happen. That's difficult in a world where interest is going up and where inflation have gone up. So that actually also
Coming down now though.
yeah, but we're still far away from the point where money was free. Okay,
That's true.
it was some few years ago.
Well, actually, a quick tangent on that. I was listening to a podcast the other day because money was free for about a fucking decade
Yeah.
or so. They still reckon that the system has got a massive correction built in because of that, and I find that plausible. A sort of Newtonian recoil, because it's not normal for interest rates to be so low for so long. Historically, it's never happened before.
No, but you must also, one of the reasons is there's so much money in the system because the people are saving for their pensions.
I think
So
that
it's a like
chugging along
you-
quite well, though.
Have
That's
you?
all the,
It's I think that it's a very easy way to describe it for normal people. When you play Monopoly, you very often experience in the end of the game one is sitting with all the land and all the money, and basically the game is more or less over, and the other guys is just taking their cars driving around, and basically they can't afford to pay, but that's okay.
Trying not to land on Mayfair.
And so on. So basically what's happening here is there's too much money there, okay? So we are in a world where we don't know where to put the money, okay? We accumulate so much cash every
You
day.
say it's too much money. Not much of it in my fucking bank account.
I agree.
Yeah. It's all in the hands of those oligarchs.
Sounds like
isn't it?
mine.
Yeah. Ian, just bring it back to these commissioners and telecoms and stuff. Do you agree with John's verdicts on? I'm sure you do agree that Vestager and Breton are the two most influential commissioners, certainly as it concerns our day job. I can't remember ever speaking about any others.
Yeah.
Would you agree with this assessment of them that they've sort of underperformed? They could have done better. Do you think we should allow more consolidation, for example?
I'm sympathetic towards the arguments on consolidation. I'm not quite sure I get the Thierry Breton talk about single European market and how that differs from in-market consolidation.
Or was that the thing where he's...
I think there's a lot of silliness discussed there, frankly. I think you know, basically what you want, if you're talking sensibly about consolidation, is you want 3 operators in a country, rather than 4 operators in a country. That's really that's the whole argument in the UK at the moment.
I think that's the fewest in like pure market dynamics. I think that's the fewest you can have, and there's still to be some competitive tension.
Yeah,
a duopoly.
I don't quite get this.
Basically, a cartel.
This suggestion that we should try and engineer some kind of 3-player market across the whole EU, which
and
is
just
the same
standardise
for
it
companies.
and all that. Yeah.
We'll do something in a kind of Soviet style, which almost sounds like what Breton's trying to do. Yeah. It's like let's have the same 3 countries in every single country.
Companies,
But and I also think you know, there's a lot of the talk about the single market, and we're not there yet, is a bit misplaced anyway, in a way, because there's regulations have been harmonised to some extent, and people like Vodafone, the fact that they're in the EU and they operate there, has allowed them more easily to set up these sort of shared facilities that serve countries than they would have done if it would have been, trying to do something across Asian countries, for instance, where they probably wouldn't have been allowed to do that. So I think, and there's, you've got things like roaming, for instance, which obviously is a massively harmonised telecom project at EU level. So not necessarily that's been particularly...
I'd say that's one of the biggest things in a telecoms context, where, I don't know, I'm slightly conflicted. I'm really happy as a consumer what the EU did about roaming. That's fucking brilliant. Except now I'm having to still pay 25 quid a month to roam with the EU, cheeky bastards.
Because we're not in the EU anymore.
Yeah, I know.
But
I don't know.
You got your Brexit.
I know. I've only myself to blame.
Roaming's a weird thing, though, for the telecom industry, because on the one hand, the idea that the EU has a single market and that you can go anywhere and use telecom services and everybody's quite happy to get their phones out now and do things that they couldn't do before is a great thing. It sounds like it should be a really positive thing for telecom.
You know what?
Yet for years they resisted it because they thought we're going to lose revenues that people pay. And then as soon as the UK leaves, they all go, we're not going to reintroduce roaming because that will be a backward step and it's not what consumers want. They've all reintroduced roaming except for VMO2. This is one of the problems with telcos, is that they're not very... I mean, maybe this is one of the things that they mean when they get up on stage at shows like this and say we need to sort of figure out exactly what we're trying to do a bit more. It's like just get the story straight.
But let me say, roaming, the free roaming would have come by itself. So before EU did all this regulation, actually Hutchinson launched it, okay? And today Hutchinson...
That's true. I remember 3 was pioneer.
Yeah, exactly. And Hutchinson have today, they introduced in Europe free roaming not only in the EU, but also in Australia, United States, and a lot of other places.
Yeah.
And I have that as part of my subscription today in Denmark. So I think that yes. What's interesting is every time someone have an overnatural profitability, and there was an overnatural profitability on roaming, there's a business opportunity for someone else. And Hutchinson proved that. And I remember at meeting with some people.
Yeah, and you used to have people like MVNOs like Leica that have made money out of doing cheaper roaming.
Exactly. So you have had that, but basically is what you do is what the EU did when they implemented the roaming part. They killed all the small operators or MVNOs.
All the Leicas.
Which basically wants to use that as differentiator in the market to gain market share. Okay? Yeah. And basically I think it's a classic example of not understanding what market dynamics is and what's creating competition. As I say, I don't agree that you need to have 3 operators to have competition in the mobile market, because what's creating competition is technological development. If I don't upgrade to 5G and you do it, you will have a better network than I have. And in that way, there's competition. And I always say it takes 2 guys to start a fight. Go to any pub in London, give them a hell lot of beers.
Adam Smith might disagree.
Well, the flip side of duopolies is it's too easy for them to form cartels. i.e. it's too easy for them to tacitly agree to.
We have competition laws to fix that shit.
I know, but they don't
Then
even
you
need
need
to,
heavy involvement.
they don't even need to
regulators.
have any kind of. They don't need to go into a smoky basement and make a little under the table agreement. They just need to watch what the other person's doing, and they just both understand that let's not compete too hard.
Every time you've seen consolidation in the US, people said prices will go up, it will be a disaster for the consumers. Okay? What we've seen in the US, investment have gone up, prices have gone down, quality of service have been improved. The American operators investing twice
Yeah,
as
but
much
there's
per
like three
capita per
operators.
those households. They have 3 operators in a country with 340 million.
Yeah.
They don't have 3 because there's actually a fourth one, which now being acquired by T-Mobile.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of small
Sure,
ones.
but if it went
anyhow.
down to one operator, prices would go
Yeah,
up, John,
yeah.
wouldn't it?
No,
If it went down to one operator, prices
then
would
you
go
could
up.
regulate it.
If it went to 10 operators, prices would go down dramatically.
But let's
So you've got to
honest-
get the equilibrium right.
Yeah.
But
And I
again,
think
if I
it's
look what
free.
you pay, may I ask a question? If I look at the margins the operators have compared to the margins Apple have, okay, Google have, okay, where's the problem? If I look at the share of wallets, okay, we're talking about regulating the telecom operators, and the telecom operators are competing like a race to the
Yeah.
bottom, who can do it cheapest and so on. Sorry, lack of intelligence. And then you have on the other side, fat cats, which are talking about how many hyperscalers do we have?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
We have 3
I'm not saying
worldwide.
I'm not
okay?
saying I'm opposed to regulating those
Okay.
companies.
So no, I'm not saying that. It's not about. I think I basically says there's only one. There's the competition force is the second strongest force in this world.
Yeah.
He's begging the question. What's the strongest, John?
That's sexual drives.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because,
You asked.
yeah, well, I know, but I knew you wanted me to ask. We're going to wrap it up because me and Pierre got to go and shoot a grown-up video.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes after I've had these weapon strength beers. But yeah, I think like to summarise that one, you know, I think your extrapolation to the two extremes, Ian, is appropriate because obviously too far one way, no one makes any money. Too far the other way, the consumer gets fucked. And to pick a random number out of the air, I think 3 is probably the optimum number of mobile operators in a given geography.
My question: are there any mobile subscribers in Europe which are fucked? If you look at what they get for what they
No,
pay.
compared to the US, we get great value.
No, but
But they all
the
have
price in the US
players.
is low too. But the price in the US is very often including a
Yeah,
subsidized
how many
phone.
markets have only got 3 in Europe?
Huh?
How many markets have only got 3?
Germany. That's it, what I can think of.
And then
Yeah.
1 and 1.
There might be Slovakia's
No.
probably got 3.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I don't want to get into it because we've really got to
Norway.
wrap up.
Norway.
But I just think that's an interesting point to
Ireland.
end it on.
Belgium.
John, hopefully, it's
He's never going to shut it
just
up.
it's just going on.
He's going to reel off everything.
No, sorry.
Norway's only got 3. Yeah, it's no, okay. No, good. You called my bluff. There are quite a few that only have 3.
I can remember some countries.
So, John, hopefully we'll see you later. Please don't have that Carlsberg Master Brew because you'll be no good to anyone, mate. It's only
Let me
5
tell you
o'clock.
one thing is, so what's happening in the England, you will throw these cans out. Here, there's a fan on them, and
Hold
they're
on,
getting
that's not finished
recycled.
yet.
They don't get they don't
All
get recycled, but you return them to the store, and
what you're gonna do?
you get a fan. I was not going to do it.
No,
So why'd you
But
pick
the
it up?
cool
Throw
thing,
them away.
no, but listen, the cool thing is, no, you don't. Listen, they will come once to take them,
Okay.
and then they turn them into cash.
All right.
We have all these Romas from Romania coming up here, collecting the bottles and cans, and making a
Cool.
fortune.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap it up there. Hopefully we'll see you later. We'll
Look,
go
see
to
you.
there's a
That's-
great bar that we go to in the meatpacking district in Copenhagen called War Pig that does barbecue and craft ales and metal. So you can imagine I'm pretty happy there. So hopefully we'll see you there, John. Thanks a lot,
Tonight.
mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
And thanks a lot for listening and wait about a month for the next one.